Member for Albany.
Contribute as a member of the Joint Standing Committee for Children and Young People in regard to the tabled report Hungry for Change, addressing food insecurity for children and young people affected by poverty. Over the last year, the committee has heard some pretty heart-wrenching accounts of West Australian children not getting enough food. These came from all sorts of people from the community, from charity groups, from teachers, from health professionals, from academics, from canteen managers who are probably at the core face of some of these kids who aren't getting fed, from parents themselves who also explained how sometimes they simply don't have enough money to put food on the table, and sometimes generationally they haven't been taught how to feed and educate their children on nutritious and wholesome food. We set out to address food insecurity for children living in poverty, and not acknowledging that every child has a right to sufficient food every day. It is estimated that approximately 17% of children and young people in West Australia live in food insecurity. The problem is likely considerably greater than available statistics suggesting, as families and children hide the fact that they don't have enough food. As the Chair mentioned, we conducted hearings here in Perth, and the committee travelled extensively through Albany and Katanning and to remote communities in the Pilbara, Gascoyne and Goldfields, as well as visiting Tasmania. Witnesses made it pretty clear that physical problems of undernutrition and malnutrition can turn into mental health problems and social problems. The ability of students to complete their education or to pursue training opportunities could lead to employment that could be compromised. And as a former regional manager of WorkLink, an organisation in Albany, we saw that firsthand. We were able to deliver a program funded by the Education Department to disengage youth. We would go around and pick these kids up in the morning in a bus, and I was very fortunate. Jane Kelsby, the member for Warren Blackwood, was the CEO. So between the two of us, we would send our staff out, or we would go out in the bus, pick these kids up, toot toot, hop in. These kids were just rolling out of bed, hadn't been fed, and one of the things that we did was we fed them breakfast and lunch, and the fridge was always full with fruit and anything else, toasties, and we'd do cooking, which really engaged the kids and made sure that they were fed. So I've seen it firsthand as an educator. We found that factors that make it difficult to children through the inquiry that they're not getting enough food was some of the factors included inadequate family income, location, so in some of the regional and remote areas they were really suffering high food insecurity, being a member of a disadvantaged community or social group, i.e. Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders or migrants or refugees, family and home circumstances, and sometimes basically just because they're a child. I was fortunate to go with the Honourable Ayor Makiwa-Chut to the Isha Neighbourhood Mothers Group in Mirrabooka, and it was fantastic to attend with the member as a committee member, but also as a migrant that had used that service, and to really hear firsthand some of the challenges that these women face. You know, one of the ladies told us that sometimes they don't even have enough money to have bread. Some of the other issues that they faced was that their kids weren't eating their traditional foods of what they had been brought up on, and were going and wanting to have the high junk food. And so these mums were struggling because they didn't know, they couldn't read some of the labels on the food. And then the other thing that they also talked about was the heating facilities in some of the schools. And I know as a mum who, I'm sure my kids would rather send spaghetti bolognese or something to school, but in my school, where my children are, it's not until year 12 that you get the privilege to use the microwave and the toaster to heat up your own hot food. And this was also evident in some of the beautiful children that I know in the Karen community in Albany, and they mentioned how they like eating rice and noodles at lunch, and that they at their school can't heat their facilities, have facilities either. When we travelled through the Great Southern, I was very proud that the committee did come to Albany, and we saw firsthand the incredible work that Food Bank does, not only in Western Australia, but in Albany. We were able to go through how they operated in the Great Southern, so Albany being the hub with the food going out further in the Great Southern. We met with the manager, Rod Pfeiffer, who is an incredible advocate for our community, but he really shared some stories that he had been seeing with some of his regular clients, that they were either coming in once a fortnight instead of once a week due to the cost of the fuel and weren't getting as much food. And he also, some of the other things that we found, the barriers for people accessing food relief included a sense of shame and stigma, which can make the experience distressing for some people. And we did hear from some parents in Albany that there was that shame and stigma around going to access those food relief programs. One thing that I didn't really think about when we started the inquiry was the actual basic human right. And in Australia, we've signed in 1948 the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it was really fascinating to hear just that basic human right of a child and what we really do need to, the core front of what we need to keep, that the child has a human basic right to food. And yeah, it was really kind of eye-opening for me personally, and something that I think the whole committee really, as we travelled through Western Australia and over to Tasmania, kept at the forefront of our mind. And one of the findings was a child's rights-based approach would suit the blame for the individual and broaden the understanding of a children's experience in poverty and food insecurity. And one of our recommendations is that the WA government places children's right at the core of policy and strategy to address food poverty and food insecurity. As the Chair mentioned previously, we've travelled to Tasmania to see firsthand a school food program that they're delivering in the schools, and it was just fantastic. Not only there's also the nutritional value of obviously a child getting fed and the while they're at school, but it was all the other social elements, the conversations of the kids interacting with each other, using knives and forks, and it was the lovely lady Julie DeBan, who had been on a Churchill Fellowship around the world looking at food programs, really shared some of her experience of what happens in other parts of the world. And the children all sit down, either in the classroom or outside. They eat off a crockery with a knife and fork. They learn to scrape their plates. They learn, the teacher talks about the menu. So where we went to this little primary school, the kids were having lasagna and salad and bread, and the kids all have to try it. It's not about whether you are hungry or you're not hungry. You all have a go at having a taste, and if you don't want your tomato to touch your lettuce, you can kind of move them around the plate. But everyone had to have a taste, and it was okay to put food in the bin. And these kids all learnt from the teacher that was of the day. She would teach them what food they were going to be eating, and that pasta was they were talking about lasagna, and they were saying, making up different names as to what it was, so the kids kind of didn't think that, oh, don't like that because mum made a bad lasagna. So it was really heartwarming. And what also happened was, if there was leftovers, the teachers would package it up and stand at the gate as the parents were coming to collect the kid, making sure that those parents that they knew needed it, they would pass it extra food. So there was no food wastage. It was just, yeah, incredible. And then at the high school, they flipped the program. It was really agile in that they had it outside under a marquee. The kids helped serve, and again, it was a conversation in the line. All the teachers could come, the social workers came, and you could just see those conversations of people. And the stigma was taken away because everyone got to go and have this free lunch program. So I really commend the Tasmanian government for what they have done with their food lunch, their school lunch program. It is a pilot, and we will be following how the success of that goes. But first-hand seeing that was just, yeah, really, really fantastic. I would like to conclude my comments there and thank my fellow committee members. Robin Clark, the chair. It's been a fantastic inquiry, and also to Neil Thompson, the Honourable Neil Thompson, and the Honourable A.L. McCure-Chute. And I'd also like to put on record, thank Dr Sarah Palmer for her guidance and research and support in this inquiry, and wish her all the best in her next endeavours. No doubt our paths will still cross. And to our other research officers, Lucy Roberts and Carmen Cummins, it's been a pleasure to work alongside your professional support in this inquiry, and I recommend the report to the House. There is lots of pictures, so make sure you get a copy and have a look at some of the incredible things that we were able to find around the state. And also, really, there is an issue, and I look forward to seeing our government addressing some of the recommendations in this report to ensure that all kids can have a healthy life by not having food insecurity. So I commend the report to the House.